Alright, so we're starting part 2 of informative speaking. In the first part, we talked about the different types of informative speaking. We talked about objects, processes, events, and concepts. Those are the 4 main types of informative speaking and the different ways that you could organize that information. So now we're going to talk about actually writing the speech itself. So first thing you need to do, there's 5 steps during the research process. So first, you have to pick your topic, okay? Helps if you choose a topic. Gotta know what you're looking at. Then second, you're gonna analyze your audience. You have to know who you're talking to because that's going to determine the specific language choice. And that's going to help determine your visual aids that you're going to use and what type of examples you're going to do if you have to make comparisons within your speech. Next thing you're going to do, you're going to gather all the material. You're going to do the actual research. Okay. Number 4, you're going to get supporting information. Choose what supporting details are going to help your main points the best. And then you're actually going to organize it. So when you're going through the research process, you don't want to jump straight into the introduction. That can be a waste because you don't know what your main points are yet. You need to figure out what your main points are, and you need to work on the body of your speech first. And then once you finish that part, you know how to introduce the material, and you also know how to conclude the material. So make sure that you do the body of your speech first, not the introduction. I know a lot of times people can get caught up on having to start at the beginning and go straight through, but you're actually going to make the process longer because if you do write your introduction out and then you get to the main content of your speech, either it's not going to flow or you're going to have to alter your main points just to fit your introduction. Where if you would just write your main points first, your introduction can be tailored to fit your main points, and it's going to be much easier. So there's 4 rules when you're doing this, okay? Number 1, do not overestimate your audience's knowledge. You don't know what they know. You don't know what they don't know. Don't assume. So if there's something that's really important to know, to understand, you need to clarify that for them. Your audience will know this subject vaguely at best. You're teaching them. You're the expert. So keep it simple. So an example would be if we were talking about meteorology. Here would be something that I would say. If modern methods of weather forecasting had existed in 1900, the Galveston hurricane disaster would have never taken place. Okay, well, I just referenced something that happened in the year 1900. That's over 100 years ago. Do I really expect my students to know what that even was? I should not assume, don't assume that your audience already knows about that specific hurricane. But I can make a connection between all the disasters that are happening now and all of that wreckage, and I can talk about how Galveston was even more devastated, and they had no idea that it was coming, and so they didn't have as much time to evacuate. I could talk about things like that. I would have to make connections though, because I can't assume that my audience is going to know that. Okay. Number 2, relate the subject to the audience. Relate it directly to them. They don't care unless it applies to them. Oh, the speech was fine, but the audience just wasn't into it. You can't say that. They weren't interested. That's not their job. Your job as the speaker is to show them why they should definitely be interested in what you're talking about. Even if you're talking about all the technical techniques of playing the trombone, okay? If you're going to pick that as your topic, you better make it interesting to the audience. It's not their fault if they're not interested. That's on you as the speaker. Understand that something that is naturally interesting to you may not be interesting to your audience. That's why they're not an expert on it, and you are. So you're going to have to make it interesting. Relate the topic to them throughout the speech, not just in the introduction when you're doing your attention getter, but make it constantly involve them and relate it back to them. If I was going to talk about being a southpaw is someone that is naturally left-handed, not right-handed. What I would do is in my speech, as I'm talking about this, I would constantly use words like you and your. Okay, so I would, in demonstrating how you might be a secret southpaw that you never knew about it, I would have them do things like, okay, I want you to close your eye, I want you to open both eyes, point at something with your right hand, close your right eye, close your left eye, which one was closer? Okay, now do the same thing with your left hand. Okay, now I want you to write your name backwards. Now I want you to write your name backwards with your left hand. And how many times did I say you and your? I'm constantly getting the audience involved with what we're doing. Okay, the third thing, don't be too technical. Yes, you do need to define the main terms. Yes, you do need to set them up. Yes, you don't want to overestimate what they know, but don't get too technical. Break terms down that you want to use. Make it very easy for them to understand. Don't assume that they already know what it means. Don't be too technical. And you're not going to impress anybody by sounding super intelligent and using all these big words with multiple syllables if they don't know what it means. So avoid being too technical unless you're going to explain it to them. And then number 4, avoid abstracts. Okay, abstracts, especially when you're talking to high school kids and junior high kids, and if you're working in children's church ministries, you definitely need to avoid the abstracts. One way that you can do that, there's actually 3 different ways. Number 1 is you can help give a description of what you're talking about, a statement that depicts a person, event, or idea with clarity and vividness. And this can use to communicate internal feelings. An internal feeling is very abstract. But if you can use a person or an event and the feelings associated with that, or the idea, if I'm trying to say that I'm super excited, okay, well that's pretty vague. What kind of excited? Like you're about to pee your pants excited? Something that I could say is, I was as excited as a 5-year-old is on Christmas morning. Okay, I just took an abstract concept and I made it perfectly clear to every single person in the audience, because every single person in the audience was a 5-year-old excited for Christmas. And so that's one way that you can do it, is by giving a description. Another type is to do a comparison. That's another way to help. So if we're talking about what it would feel like if a comet struck the Earth, okay, there's no way anybody in this room would be able to imagine that. Like, we have no clue what that is. But what I could do is I could take something that we already know, and I could say it would be the equivalent of all the nuclear bombs in the entire world exploding in one place. Okay, now I just took an abstract and I made it very real for my audience. And then the third way is to do a contrast. Okay, and I'm talking about how winning the lottery is very impractical. An example would be, I'm giving a statistic and saying you have a 1 in 14 million chance. Okay, those are really big numbers. That's a really big number, but that doesn't mean that my audience understands just how unfathomable that is. So what I could also say is I could contrast that with the probability of being struck by lightning is 1 in 700,000. By saying that, I just made it way more real for them. And to make it even better, I could say that means you're more likely to be struck by lightning 20 times than you are to win the lottery. I just took really big numbers and I just made it very easy for them to understand and relate. So those are all ways that you can help avoid abstracts when you're giving statistics or trying to explain something that's very abstract. And so that is how you organize your informative speech. Good luck, guys.